Hey folks, today I'm going to show you how to make these fake water caustics. So it's going to be a fairly quick tutorial, it's not that complicated. As you know, rendering caustics in Blender is an absolute nightmare using the Cycles render engine. The technique I'm going to teach you today is a quick and easy way of rendering caustics and this lighting setup here. So without further ado, let's get to it. So the first thing we're going to do, add a mesh plane. Before we continue, if you go to Preferences and go to your add-ons and then search for Node Wrangler and enable this add-on here, it's going to help in the process when we come to setting up the materials. So I'm just going to take this plane here, I'm going to hit S10 and scale it up by 10 and then Control A and apply the scale. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to add a light spotlight, and then going to hit G, Z, and we'll just drag this up to around about there. I'm going to go straight into rendered view. This is in Cycles as well, by the way, guys, so make sure you've got Cycles selected. We're going to use nodes, so with your spotlight selected, click use nodes, and then we'll turn the strength up here, so say 5000. It's going to seem a bit bright to start with. We'll also take down the blend value and we'll increase the angle to 120 degrees. You can make it whatever you want. So from here I'm going to add two Voronoi textures. So we'll go Shift A, add texture, Voronoi. I'll set this to 4D and we'll use smooth F1. Okay, I'll then duplicate that, I'll bring it down to here, and we're going to mix these together using a color mix node. So color mix, and then we'll set this to difference. Okay, we'll plug the distance into the top value and this distance into the bottom value. Okay, we'll set this a factor of 1 and we'll plug this straight into the emission factor there. I'm then going to add a vector mapping node and Shift A, input texture coordinate. We're going to be using the normal coordinates on this one because we want to be projecting down on the z-axis. I'll then plug this value, this vector into there, and I'll plug this vector into here. I'm also going to be using the Node Wrangler to add these points here just to neaten everything up. I'll delete that. I'll then connect this up to this vector. What I'm doing is I'm holding down Shift and then right striking my mouse to add these noodles here. Use control points. Okay, so I've added that there. From here we're going to actually be animating it with the W factor here. How should I do this? Maybe we're going to add 3 value nodes, so go to search and type in value. Okay, we'll add the first one there, we'll duplicate it, add the second one there, and then duplicate it, add the third one there. So this first value, this is going to be the W factor. I'll connect that up to there. I'll connect this one up to here. I'm then going to Shift right strike to add this noodle point here. I'll then Shift right strike here. This is just to neaten it up so it's easy for readability. And I'll do the same here. And we'll drag this one down to, say, around about there. Okay. This one, this should be the scale. I'm going to drag this into the scale here. I'll then drag this into the scale here. I'm going to add a noodle there. I'll add one here. It's a bit finicky, but it makes it easier for you to read. Okay, I'll add this one around about here. It doesn't have to be perfect. So now with this one, this is going to be the smoothness factor. Before we do that, we're going to add a converter math node. We're going to keep it set to add, and the bottom value I'm going to have at 0.25. I'll plug this into the top one. I'll then plug this value into this one here. I'm going to add a strike through. Let's neaten this up a little bit, and then I'll add this one to the bottom smoothness here. I'll also add a strike through just for readability. Okay, and the reason why I've got this math node here is because I want factor to be offset by 0.25. I don't want the textures to be exactly the same, they need to be offset slightly. And I'll set this at 0.25. Let's see. Yep, we'll change the scale now. As you can see, as I move this, scale changes. Maybe I'll have that set to 10. This value here, this will increase your contrast. Or rather, we shouldn't be using that one. We should be using this one here. I might bring that down to maybe 0.15. And then we're going to adjust the brightness as well. Say 10,000. Maybe that's too bright actually. 5,000. That'll do for the minute. We're going to have to change this when we add a material, because this plane here is a white material by default. So this is going to be your animation factor here, because it's plugged into the W factor, which is kind of like the fourth dimension on any textures. To animate this, I'll just open up my timeline as well. Okay, I'll do it down here. There we go. Set this to timeline. So we've got 250 frames here. That doesn't matter too much. So now I'm going to add a driver onto this value. I'm just going to make sure I'm set to frame 1. To add a driver, we're going to hit hash, type in frame, all lowercase, and then divide by, let's say, 1000. Let's see what that does. Okay, you can see, kind of see what's happening here. I'm happy with that. Okay guys, I've just imported this asset. It's my Rock and Stones Essential Pack. You can buy this on Blender Market if you want to. Otherwise you can kind of scatter your own rocks. You don't have to use this. So I'm going to delete this other plane. That's just what we used to work with. I'll select this. I'm going to scale it up, say 2. Let's see what we've got here. Okay, go out of edit mode. Go into rendered view. Select my spot. So I might even turn up the brightness on this. Maybe I'll times that by 2. Yeah, it's double as bright now. I'll just set up some basic lighting here. I'm going to add an environment texture. Go to your world, go to background, Control T, and then open up an environment texture. You can get these off HDRI Haven. Let's see what we've got. I'm going to use something relatively low, maybe an 8K, something with lots of cloud in, so we get some nice reflections going on. Okay, I'll choose that. I'll turn the value up on the strength to say 1. Okay, I'm happy with that. Right, now we're going to add the water. I'm going to show you a little hack, because if we've got our spotlight, you're going to see the reflection of the spotlight on the water, and we don't want that. We want the caustics to penetrate through with no shadows whatsoever. So to add the water, I'm just going to add Shift A, add Mesh Cube. I'll then say scale that up, S2, and then S2. Yeah, okay, want it about that depth-ish, and then S Shift Z, and that will scale it on every axis but the Z axis. Take it to around about there, and then I'm going to hit Control A, and we're going to apply the scale. So the water, it's going to be a relatively simple node setup here. I'm going to click New, and we're going to delete the principal BSDF. I'm going to add Shift A, glass shader. Yep, glass BSDF. I'm also going to add a transparent. So shader, go to transparent. I'm then going to add a mix shader. We'll add that. The glass goes into the top. The transparent will go into the bottom. And then we're going to add a light path node. Shift A, light path. Okay. And we're going to use the transmission depth as the mix factor. And then we'll plug the shader into here. We're also going to add some volumetric elements in a minute, but before we do that, let's concentrate on creating these sort of waves. And go into rendered view. Let's see what we've got so far. Basically, without this node mixing with the transparent, what you'd have is kind of lots of shadow. The HDRI or all your lamps will be creating shadows from this cube. With this little hack, it doesn't create shadows, it doesn't darken it down. We basically get to see, hang on, if I turn down the strength of the HDRI, we get to see the fake caustics penetrating straight through the surface of the water. So I'll turn that back up to make the water, like the ripples and things like that, straightforward. So we go to vector, add bump, and we'll take the normal value and we'll plug that into the normal of the glass. I'll then add a texture, noise texture, and I'm also going to set this to 4D, and then I'll plug the factor into the height of the bump node. As you can see, we're getting some deformation now. I might turn the strength down to say 0.5. We'll also add a bit of roughness on the glass shader to maybe 0.05, and we'll change the index of refraction to 1.333 because that's the index of refraction for water. From here, we're going to add a mapping node, vector mapping. We'll plug the mapping node into the vector of the noise texture, and we're going to add a texture coordinate, which is input texture coordinate, and we're going to be using the object coordinates for the noise texture. Okay, it's gone a bit crazy because basically the scale is affected by the object. We'll turn the scale down to maybe 0.25, see if that works. Okay, happy with that. We're going to be adding a driver to this node. I might just go into workbench just so I can see what I'm doing here. So in here I'm going to type in hashtag frame, all lowercase, divide by, let's start off with 10. Let's see what that gives us. Okay, I'm kind of happy with that. Maybe it could be a bit faster, but I'm also going to be animating the mapping node as well on the Y. If I'm in front face view, as you can see, no, not the Y, the X. I'm going to be animating this X because I want the flow to be going towards the camera. If I type in hashtag frame divide by 10, we'll just start that off as a base. It will be maybe 100. Let's try that. Okay, that's too slow. Maybe a median point of divide by 50. Okay, it's going away from the camera. I want it to come towards the camera. Now I'm going to type in a negative minus at the end, and now it should be flowing towards the camera. Oh no, sorry, I made a mistake. I put the negative before the 50, so it's frame divide by negative 50, and then it should be coming towards the camera. Right, I'm going to go into cycles view, and now we're going to add some volumetrics into the scene. This will probably slow your computer down a little bit. It does increase render times, but that's the price you have to pay for realistic water. Hit Shift A, shader, volume absorption. I'm then going to hit Shift A, shader, volume scatter. I'm going to hit Shift A, shader, add shader. I'll plug the volume absorption into the top socket, the volume scatter into the bottom socket. I'll then drag that shader into the volume socket on the material output. As you can see, it's way too much at the moment. I'm also going to turn up the, I can never say this word, anisotropy. We're going to turn up this value to 0.75, and maybe we'll change the colour to, say, a slightly sandy colour. The top one, we're going to turn this way down. Maybe we'll turn the colour of this to a sandy kind of colour as well. I'll bring the density down on both of them, all the way down. In fact, this one can be around, say, 0.5, so it's giving it a bit of a tinge there. And the density up on this one to 0.2. I might bring the density of the volume absorption down to 0.25. You'll kind of find a median point here, so I'll go into front face view. Let's just go up here, and then I'm going to hit Control Alt 0, and that will place my camera where my viewport is. Let's activate my camera. I'll then select it. I'm going to reposition it on the X. I'm going to hit 0. I'm kind of happy with the rest of the positioning. That'll be fine. I might even bring it down a level here. Let's just drag that forward a bit. drag this down a bit. I'm getting some reflection on here, which is caused by the spot on the spotlight. We go to this option here, and we'll go to visibility, and we'll unclick transmission and glossy. We could also take it off the volume scatter. It will save on render times, but you won't get the beams. If I uncheck that, we won't get any beams. I like to keep that on. So now the only thing the spot is doing is causing beams in the volume density and also projecting on the riverbed itself. So if I turn off the HDRI, you can kind of see what you're getting here. I'll turn on the HDRI one. I might even bring my camera down, because to add realism to any scene, it's good to see some nice reflections. If I take my camera, I'll lower this down as low as I can. Hang on, let me just go into workbench. Okay, we can bring my camera down, G, Z, take it down to, you know, something quite low, and then we'll increase the angle, bring this across here, G, round about there, and I'll bring up the angle so we can see the reflections. Okay, so we should see some reflections from the HDRI now, like clouds and stuff. Okay, yep, you can see that on the surface. And another thing we're going to do, this is the final step, we're going to add Shift A, add Mesh Cube. I'm then going to hit S4 and then S Shift Z, and we're just going to scale this up to around about there. I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to delete this top face, so X, delete faces. I'm going to apply the scale, Control A, and apply the scale. I'm going to add a material to this. Let's say we'll take the colour down to black. We'll take the specular right down and the roughness up to maximum. And that way this will block any light bleed coming in from the sides. And for the video, obviously, I just animated the camera. So yeah, that's it in a nutshell, guys. I hope you found this little Caustics hack useful. If you did, please hit the like button and consider subscribing. It really helps my channel. Have a great day, folks. See you soon.